Hey, everyone, ladies and gentlemen, which is the word to start. I'm trying to get my composure here. We're really excited. Thank you for dropping in on us today, joining us today, just being with us today as we discuss 1974 Texas Chainsaw Massacre and the remake of the 2003 version. I am the host, Alejandro Cowie. Today, I am having Del Taco, a little bit of a Coke here, a little bit of tacos. I got a whole bunch of things here. I don't want to take too much time. Fries. I'm going to be a piglet today. Happy about that. I'm going to go ahead and introduce a guest here. First of all, say hello, Yaya.
I am back. Oh my gosh, I miss you guys. So today I am having passion fruit green tea. It's always tea with me.
Ooh.
Yes, and I am having Vietnamese food again.
Yes.
I'm having bun hoi. Bun hoi is my favorite food. I remember, I think I talked about how like instead of using vermicelli last time, I used bun hoi. So this is bun hoi. It's just like a vermicelli sheet. It's a noodle sheet, and yeah,
it looks delicious.
It is delicious. So it's just rice noodles, and usually you'll have it in like wrapped with like different herbs in like a like romaine lettuce leaf. And I also have some bone is also beef. So yes, more bun hoi.
Fantastic. And along with us we have Lonny.
Hi, it's good to be back.
Welcome back.
Today I am drinking a very delicious Jack and Coke again because that's what I always drink because it's easy. And I'm also having my favorite ice cream in the whole world, Rebel cookie dough ice cream.
You know what I love about this? You had this perfect presentation of your little cookie ice cream with the farmhouse line.
Straight from the farm.
I grew up with Vanna White, so I just
I love it. Now, is that milk made out of a special type of, and we'll go there later. But anyway, fantastic. I love it. Presentation, everything. Thank you for joining us, guys. I'm super excited. You guys are with us on Hellraiser. Now we're gonna talk about checks. Oh Lord. And what's with us like talking about the disgusting
right.
Hey, I love it. It's great.
Even though this movie is tame in comparison.
Yes, exactly. I was, oh my Lord. Let's hop right into it. I mean, once again, guys, thanks for joining us today. If you didn't hear us the first time, we're talking about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1973 and the remake of the 2003 version here. I'm your host, Alejandro Cowie, and this is my guest, Lonny and Yaya. And once again, let's go straight into the concept of let's talk about the rating in general. Lonny, I was reading some things on some trivia, and I was very fascinated, especially by the rating of this actual film. Let's talk about the ratings. Let's go ahead and talk about the initial first. Let's go drop in with the 1974 version, where we're going to talk about just the vibe and the initial introduction, how you felt about it. Let's go ahead and just talk about your feelings about it, the ratings about it, and go right ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. This is another one of those classics that I kind of fell in love with young because I had that friend who just always watched horror movies. So I was always this and like Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street, like all those. Like I grew up with those, even though I wasn't supposed to. Like my parents knew when I was a kid, if I was watching those movies, it would have been a nightmare beyond the nightmares that I already was having. This one was really this one I didn't really understand the significance of when I was younger until I got much older and had my love and my knowledge of horror movies and everything really kind of take off, and revisited it later in my 20s to really gain the love for it I have now. And part of that is because to Tobe Hooper, who has just made some of my favorite films. He hasn't made many, but he's considered one of the masters of horror. And between this, the sequel, and Poltergeist, like some of the best scary movies that I can remember.
He did do Poltergeist. That's right.
He did Poltergeist. Yeah,
That's
absolutely. Right. Steven Spielberg produced it, but Tobe Hooper did all the directing on it. But like the rating for this movie is really interesting because this movie kind of came out of nowhere, especially at the time. It was a different kind of horror movie. It changed the landscape of horror movies entirely. And part of the marketing process for this movie, which is very similar to like movies like Blair Witch and Cannibal Holocaust, is they were marketed as being real, as a true story, as something that actually happened. And that got people to the theaters. It was one of those marketing devices that some horror directors, even to this day, still hold on to, of like presenting these films as being extra scary because they're real. You know, they're
Based
extra
on
visceral.
actual events.
Right, exactly. Even though this is taken from all kinds of inspiration of actual events, it's, you know, it's not. But I mean, this just jumping into like a factoid about it, this movie was made for $140,000.
Yeah, the budget. Oh my God!
That's
Please continue.
it.
Is insane.
Even today with inflation, that's less than $900,000 this movie was made for. I mean, to have a classic like this be made for pennies, even in '74, this is pennies. You know, they were filming on 16 millimeter cameras. They had like one or two boom mics. Like there was nothing to this production.
Exactly.
And so I think it holds that extra special place. It may not be the best film, which is why I kind of rated it at about a 4. It's not the best in kind of the grand scope of all the horror movies that I love, but it's important, and it's because of its importance, I give it a little bit higher. Even though I like the sequel a lot better. Texas Chainsaw 2 is in my top 5, also by Tobe Hooper, but this one is just important to the whole grand scheme of horror and what it did for horror and bringing in the slasher era of horror. This is the first slasher. You have your first final girl. You know, you've got so many firsts that are in here that just have changed horror to what we know of it today. And we wouldn't have horror as it is today. We wouldn't have Scream without this movie. We wouldn't have A Nightmare on Elm Street without this movie. We wouldn't even have like Michael Myers or Jason without this movie. So that's kind of where I put it.
Excellent. Well, that's, you know, and you make a lot of valid points, and just from exactly of what they had to work with and what they started, and just being that, you know, tiny snowball on the top of the hill, just starting that, you know, momentum coming down to something that we are now discussing now, just the horror genre. We're coming at the month of October. For God's sakes, we love it, love it. On that note, we're gonna transfer over Yaya here. Now, Yaya, in regards to your introduction to the film, the vibes of it into the beginning, and how you generally feel about it. Please.
Okay.
Sorry.
No worries. I gave it a little bit lower. I did give it a 3. Because like, yes, it's definitely classic. It's definitely like it is such like a huge step for like horror films. But at the same time, I think for me personally, I did a disservice because I'm the type that watches the remakes before I watch the originals, and I'm trying to break myself out of that habit because
in comparison, it's a bad movie.
Yes.
I mean, honestly, it is.
Yes. Yes. So for me, unfortunately, it was again, I think this is always my thing, is always pacing. And it's just, I think for me overall, I guess breakdown is like, for me, I think it was trying to keep like tensions up constantly. There was no like lull that it allowed me to like step back and be like, because of that, it actually for me did a disservice, is because like it just got too much, the point that I just stepped back completely.
And that's exactly why I love it the way that it is, because the whole time you're just like, there's just this air the entire film of just tension, uncomfortableness, grossness.
Most definitely. Yes.
Yeah.
So you were saying it just felt like it's being spit at you too fastly.
It's actually not like that. It's just like I think they were I don't know if I'm like saying this, it felt like to me personally that it was trying too hard to constantly keep me tense.
Gotcha.
It was trying to keep me like constantly, oh my gosh, next corner, especially with how like the movie is. It's like things happen really quickly and it was slow, but at the same time they still kept it on too long, to the point that I was like, okay, I'm gonna step back, because I'm giving myself anxiety, to the point I'm just kind of like, it wasn't as keeping my attention anymore, even though it was trying to. So that's personally why for me, it was like, I can't stand constantly screaming. And I think that's the biggest one. And I'll go on about this later on, because
totally.
I think if it worked for that, this movie would be like a 4.5 for me. But it was just the scream.
Which I think really speaks to kind of his influence for this too, or the old Italian giallo films. that are literally built to be high tension, high anxiety films where the whole time you're watching these films, it's almost like a Cronenberg type of film where just like everything is just like always something happening between the soundtrack, between the environment, between the dialogue and everything. That the way that the scenes are shot is like you're always on edge, just like grabbing your seat, like, okay, what's going to happen next?
Now, quick question for both of you. When Yaya, do you remember like roundabouts what age you were when you saw the film the first time at all?
28.
28, cool. And then Lonny, you mentioned you said you saw it with your friend that always sees that those had like a stash of horror, right?
Yeah, I was like 8 or 9 probably when I saw it the first time.
Interesting, because I find this fascinating because both of all here it's fascinating to me because hearing both your perspectives, you have excellent valid points because like coming into this, it does seem that the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, that initially 1973 version, starts the concept of the whole. Here's the big baddie. Here is a terrifying concept. He's huge. He picks up people like and we'll go into this. He's just that ultimate, hey, I got you, I ain't letting you go, and I'm about to do very horrible things to you. And there's no doubt in your mind, they immediately happen. You see it happen. He gets you, he kills you. That's plain and simple. There's no jokes about it, right? And that being said, it's interesting because I saw it at the age, if I'm correct, of 13. I lived in Texas at the time being, and as you said, Lonny, the beginning of the film hit me based on actual events. And then on the bottom of the film, it mentions the rural Texas area, and I, being a kid that I am, I run over to my encyclopedia and check it out, and it's 20 miles away from where I freaking live. So this, and I think it is. In reality, it's probably a town that sounds familiar because it's a whole fake kind of thing. But the thing was, I was freaking the heck out.
Well, it's like right outside Austin, I think, is where all the filming was. It was like right outside Austin,
Yeah. Oh my Lord! And my thing was, I was like, what the heck is this about? As a kid being introduced to it, I wasn't very sure how to take it, and because this whole concept, the based on actual events, was still stuck in my head. So the initial interaction, which two things surprised me. Yaya, you mentioned this perfectly. They hit you with things just at a thing where it almost seems obnoxious. However, what hit me in the back of my head is this actually happened. This actually happened. So I was starting to give myself mini panic attacks because I was like, why are they forcing this in my face? And I'm like, I can't get my eyes off of it because I think it's real. Right. And at this time was happening, I just couldn't. I didn't know what to do. Here's the funny thing, though. The director wanted to get this rating a PG rating. He wanted to be the least gruesome film ever that implied things more than actually showed them. And yet we see some intense stuff happen, and yet it's like one of the least bloody things in existence. And yet I cringe.
It honestly could have been a PG film for back then.
Exactly.
Poltergeist is a PG film.
I was about to say like Poltergeist, Friday the 13th, Michael Myers. Those make me cringe less than this actual movie did. But they actually had more blood, guts, and gore than this film actually did. They do so well and just implying stuff, when it happens. On that note, before I forget, when we go into this here, I'm going to go ahead and spit out the popcorn ratings for this one. Initially, for the 1974 version, I had it at a 3.5, I believe. And then for the second version, I had it at 4. Yeah, I'm going to shoot to you in regards to your ratings for both of those. What would those be?
Oh, I said mine was 3 for the original and 5 for the remake.
Fantastic. Excellent.
Yes. And honestly, I think if I saw it as a kid, it would have impacted me more, but I did see it as an adult. So that's probably one of the bigger reasons as well.
Which, I think that makes a huge difference. It absolutely does.
And Lonny, just
like
verbal comment.
Yeah.
Oh, on your confirmation, what was your ratings again? Because I know I asked you guys earlier, but just for...
Mine's a 4 for this one. A 4 for this one. And the remake, I put it at about a 3.5.
Excellent. And then okay, that makes sense. And it's funny because like I love the fact that we're all coming from different positions. And Yaya, you nailed it on the head, saying the concept that you saw at 28. Lonny, you mentioning seeing at a young age with that person you felt really connected with. With all this, this collection of horror genre. And then myself, 13. Funny fact, going back at this, I could not watch the whole film when I originally saw it. I was scared to death. The screaming got to me. I actually had to lower it down at first. I didn't want to scare my mom. I didn't want to wake up my parents because I was like, they're gonna be pissed off if they see me, which was TNT Monster Vision. Anyway, so I went back into watching
growing up
this.
with Monster Vision.
Exactly. And what actually ended up happening, like Yaya, I stopped it. And I was like, nah, I ain't doing this. And I saw it at the age of 25. And what threw me off, though, was I saw the remake. And I watched the remake. I'm like, this is not what I remember. And I was watching, I was like, this is a remake. I had no idea. Which was funny because I was like, the differences are, here and there. But I will say, though, seeing the remake all the way through made me want to go back and watch the first one again. And I still cringed just as much, even though I expected things, but it still got me. On that note, I do not want to forget about our lovely audience here that's with us today. They got some comments I want to read off here too as well, if you guys don't mind. Ooh, excuse me for partially going dark here. So on here, we have Q here. What's up, Q? Good to see you, my friend. He said, hey, all, 5 out of 5 on the 73 version. I mean, it's a classic. It's the most psychological fucked up movie ever, and a 5 out of 5 for the 03 version. Really kind of following the original, but giving it its take on it. The soundtrack for the 03 is so badass. In the driving scene, Jessica Biel jamming out to the Sweet Home Alabama by Leonard Skinner. For sure. Joyce Lee Music says, I've never seen either film. I came here for the cookies. We love cookie lovers. Yeah. And Q Ball says, what kind? And Joyce says, whatever kind brings me closer to the dark side. We like that vibe here. Excellent. We
Absolutely
tend to make better cookies. Now, on this note here, let's go ahead and talk about the introduction to the 1973 version. Q, I want to use you as a great inspiration, my friend, because you were talking about the soundtrack for the 04 version. Funny thing about the 1974 version is they technically didn't have a soundtrack.
Nope, it's all ambient sounds.
Yeah, from a slaughterhouse, man. That's just oh my god, which makes the movie even more So I want to start off with you, Yaya. We're coming into this initial beginning of the scene. We see that we actually have Lonny, you mentioned this. You see that you actually have the characters being those of a hippie vibe, of a free-loving nature. They're in their classic van. They're going down the road. You get this vibe for them in general, the character-wise. What is your perception? Like, what do you think of the group that's in this van right now at this point that they're going on, and just the beginning of the film? How is it pulling you in, or the lack of pulling you in, either or?
So I really, first before that, I love that little splash, like that camouflage, and then you see like parts of the corpse.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, like even like I think for me, I love that part. 'Cause for me, I was kind of like, okay.
Yeah.
And then it talks about like the grave robbing and all that stuff, and it's like that's the reason why these kids are coming in. It's because apparently they're checking, Sally and Franklin are checking up, make sure that their grandfather has not been desecrated and that kind of stuff, and that's why they're coming to that town.
Thank you for clearing that. Yeah, exactly. How can you for that scary ass freaking graveyard scene? Go on.
Yeah. No, that was I love that. So in the beginning, you have the girl, she's reading the horoscopes, and I'm like, oh my god, why does that sound like my little sisters? And I was like, oh my gosh. So okay, I'm gonna be mean. First off, seeing these kids, I was like, yeah, okay. I hope you guys are not likable, which they weren't. That was like, we'll get to that later, but I'm like, I have no sympathy for these kids. And so these kids, I was kind of like, oh my god, please just stop. But then of course you get Nubbins, and I love Nubbins. I think he's adorable. I watched horror movies as an adult, so instead of seeing from a kid's perspective where it's like, oh my god, scary people, it's more like, hey, I will pick you up. I'm a degenerate. I'm a degenerate. Oh. Okay, cool. We'll bond over this. Anyways, we'll bond
this
more.
Guy.
Yes. So I was like, I love Nubbins. I love his energy. And then I'm sorry, but Franklin, I was like, oh my god, Franklin, you need to stop.
Yeah, he's a little.
Yeah, for those who don't, I guess never seen it. Franklin is like the wheelchair guy. And I'm like, I want to give him benefit of doubt because I'm like, I feel bad. He's like disabled.
No, but he's just the worst.
He is
the
worst.
Shut up. It's like, shut up, dude. Just please shut up.
Like, he wouldn't stop whining about everything. And I want to give him benefit of doubt because it seemed like no one else cared about him either. And I was like, but I'm like, oh, now I see why.
Why do you think he cut me with that knife? I don't know. Maybe because he's a psycho.
Yeah.
Like, let's leave it alone.
Yeah.
Oh
I
my
know, so,
God.
exactly. So I was just kind of like, oh, these kids. I'm like, well, have fun, kids. So right off the bat, I was like, these kids. I'm like, no, sorry. I can't wait to see you guys get slaughtered in the most gruesome way. So
Oh
then
my
you
God,
don't
your
even get
face
that
when you said that was
satisfaction.
so innocent and
you
funny.
don't.
Oh my God, you guys are both horrible, and I love you both for it. I love it.
I mean,
On that note,
if I
Lonny,
could,
real quick here.
oh yeah.
Oh no, I was going to transition over you. And since we're talking about this car scene, the excellent explanation Yaya gave us about the initial reason why they're there in the graveyard and so forth as well. Character wise, who were introduced to, introduced to. Sorry. What is your opinion, my friend?
Well, I'll jump back like Yaya did. I'll jump back to the very beginning. Just the opening shots of this film is the scroll kind of telling what's going on. Those camera flashes, that eerie sound that it's iconic to this movie that doesn't have a soundtrack. Like you've got Michael Myers' song, you've got you've got the Friday the 13th Jason, you've got that.
Yeah.
You've got those iconic sounds. This one has that sound, which has never really been explained. Like the sound guy, like they always ask him, how did you make that sound? He goes, it's trade secret. I'm never going to tell you how I made that sound. But it's unique to that movie. It's that eerie, like metal scraping, weird sound that just kind of is jarring. And then you're getting these glimpses of corpses with the camera flash. And it just immediately jumps you into that anxiety. You're already at a point of like, okay, so this is weird.
Yeah.
And then you get the narration of the scroll, which is a really interesting little fact. Do you know who the narrator is on that scroll?
Oh no, I don't. Not top of my head.
Famed character actor John Larroquette.
Really? No shit. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And speaking of the remake, they bring him back as narrator.
Oh, that's cool.
As kind of a tie-in to that whole thing. That's kind
really
of an
cool.
interesting little point. Yeah. But yeah, you're first introduced to these characters, and it's already like setting up what would become kind of the trope for a slasher film. The tropes of these characters. You know, you have the group of friends. You have
I never thought about that, dude.
Yeah. You have kind of the nerdy guy, or the guy who's, got some sort of ailment or issue or addiction or something like that. You've got kind of the jockey guy who's kind of in charge. You've got the kind of sweeter hippie girl, and then you've got like the more cheerleader-y type of girl, and that's where we lead into to Marilyn Burns, Sally, who is the first real scream queen for these type of films. And honestly, like most of these horror movies, and as the tropes continue to grow and move on, none of these characters are really likable. They're all kind of just rambunctious teenagers. They're all kind of a pain in the ass. They all think that they're smarter than everybody. These are kind of big city kids, and like, even if for Texas, these are big city kids coming into like the country and thinking that they're superior to the people there, and they pay for it. And that's what we get. Again, same with Franklin. I hate Franklin.
Oh my God.
Yeah. You're supposed to feel something for him because he's in a wheelchair, but honestly,
no.
Yeah, yeah, like no,
you don't.
And see that's the thing, though. I was gonna say, you're nail on the head. They're not likable at all. But continue. Sorry, go on.
But then you get introduced to like when they go to the gas station. They pull up to the gas station and they meet
Drayton.
They meet Drayton, who is, depending on which storyline you want to go with, he's either the big brother or he's daddy.
Yeah.
He's the father. I go with he's just one of the brothers. There's all the brothers, and old Papa, which we get introduced to later, is granddaddy of the family and everything. Which I think the remakes and some of the expanded movies kind of touch on that a little bit more. Texas Chainsaw 2, I think, makes him more of a father figure than he was, but he's the oldest, I think, is what it comes down to. And then you got Nubbins, which I love. Nubbins, he's which I always thought of as the proto Chop Top. Chop Top in the second one, which is Bill Moseley. He's the proto version. What I found out is he's actually supposed to be Nubbins' twin brother.
Twin brother, yes, they're supposed to be twins.
And even looking at I can't remember the actor's name right now who plays Nubbins, their mannerisms, their speech is very similar to what Bill Moseley does as Chop Top in the second film. They have that same kind of sound to their voice, the choppiness, the speech impediment, like all of that is there. And I thought that was just kind of a brilliant touch that I don't think really gets noticed very much, because I love Chop Top. Chop Top's probably one of my favorite Texas Chainsaw villains ever. But yeah, you get Drayton. You get introduced to Drayton. He's just the bumpkin. You know, he's got this little gas station and barbecue shop. You know, kind of very much the inspiration for Captain Spaulding from the
House of a Thousand
Corpses and all that. Like, he's this country bumpkin who has a gas station and chicken shack, you know, whatever. But you're not immediately shown the viciousness of Drayton right away. You just kind of know something's off. But
which they introduce these characters pretty quickly in the film, which I was surprised by. On that too as well. That's and you know what's funny though? It's interesting that you mentioned, you know, talking how you introduce these characters. Yaya, you mentioned this earlier, and I'm going to hit this point again. The amount of unlikableness to every single one of these characters is pushed through. There's no sense of anything at all. Right. And it's almost as if it's like pulling out a, you know, pseudo very horrible version of fortune telling cards, and like, this is what happens when you act gluttonous. This is what happens when you're talking about infidelity, and it's insane how you guys brought up these excellent points in which they're not meant to be liked, or maybe what we thought was meant to be a trope or a attribute that we were supposed to cling on or feel sorry for really made them more shittier people, in my opinion, when it comes to that. And there's
supposed to be visions. There's supposed to be visions of things about ourselves that we don't want to admit. You know, things about ourselves that other people probably don't like, or people from the outside see in us that are grosser parts of ourselves that sometimes we aren't even aware of. It's supposed to be a picture of that sort of thing. That's part of what horror does. Is horror gives you a glimpse of a side of the world that you want to ignore. You know, that isn't supposed to exist.
No, totally.
I think the late 90s and early... Oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Before I forget here, I don't mean to interrupt you here. There were some couple of comments here. In fact, one directed towards you, my friend. Joyce Lee Music says, "Hello, Lonnie." Cue Ball mentions about when it comes to food, as well as his chocolate and peanut butter cookies. Sounds so good about now because they're talking about the cookies. They were mentioning whatever brings the dark side. Joyce mentions that my favorite are chocolate chip. A lot of fans for chocolate chip here. Then Nom Talk Network family goes into the peanut butter cookies with producer Steph. Cue Ball mentions an excellent point here as well. The actor who played Leatherface in 03 version scared the shit out of me. I was like, okay, I'm going to need breathing treatment. It really made me breathe hard. Which I'm going to ask you guys some questions about this here. So, because I understand we're kind of a time crunch here. But question, I hear both of you. One, I want you to notice I keep skipping the graveyard scene. That scared the living daylights out of me, kid, and I have a habit of trying to ignore it. So every time I go on to say something, I'm so sorry. Thank you guys for actually bringing up the introduction of it. That actually gave me like mini PTSD. I don't like that scene. That it drives me nuts because, as you said, Lonnie, as you said, Yaya, the announcer that's going at it, the articulation, the words he was using, the camera signals that are happening on there, it actually looked real to me, and it threw me off. The deteriorating skin, just the the pseudo little shrine they did on the top of the actual graveyard itself, everything in general. And at this point, we do know that the only reason why they're actually going in here is they're visiting a friend's grandfather, as you guys said before, to see if he's okay in general. And which is funny because on one of the descriptions it says that, but in the film they know he's dead already, so they're just going to go pay respects to his grave for the desecration, the concept. And I guess a little interesting thing is that story in the beginning was being worked on, I guess, and a couple of things been mentioned, I think, here in the trivia thing, which I'll mention a little later, the alteration for some requirements. But then again, Lonnie, you made a great point that this thing was made on such a small budget. I also want to ask your guys' opinion on initially the vibe of the film. I noticed, and we've been talking about this for the lack of soundtrack because it's just how excellent they did the camera noises in which to the noises of just the slaughterhouse as well. A lot of just repeated uses and stuff, just really, really strategically. But have you noticed the initial beginning of the film, the jump scare wasn't initially a bloody jump scare. It was actually a restroom stop. Him, going off into, the initial just using the restroom. And it was just a semi truck going by super freaking fast. And just the sound of gravel and seeing him roll down the thing made me start to panic. And I did not expect that because initially I was like, what the heck? So just bringing this up is just, just little nuances they, did here and there just to keep the audience's attention. Once again, the lack of actual blood and gore and the more suggestive tones and so forth as well. Funny thing, you guys keep on mentioning the hitchhiker, Nubbins, and so forth as well. I was talking to Lonny earlier. Evidently, Nubbins claims that the actor here, Edwin Neal, claims that the Texas State Troopers actually went over there and shook his hand because they were saying that crime dropped 18.5% since the movie release, and the initial take was not to pick up hitchhikers. So, so I was like, whoa, so that's fantastic. But on that note, you guys mentioned this, and I really want to get into this. So yeah, I want to start off with you. Comparisons to the beginning of the 1973 version and the 2003 version. Did you have a preference of how they did the introductions? Did you enjoy more? Opinions in general?
So definitely for introductions, I still go with the original. That flashes of the corpse, and even when I was watching it today again just to refresh, I was like, dude, legit, those corpses still look very much real to this day. It was done, the decomposition, everything. I was just like, dude, if you didn't tell me that was someone that was dug up, I'll have been like, oh, it's like, but so for the opening, I definitely do like the original, because for the remake, it's just it's the post movie. It's basically afterwards are like, oh yeah, people disappearing, and then it's the policeman going down there, if I remember correctly. It's a policeman going to check it out. So and then they do the thing. It's like, drop the camera. It's like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Yeah. And then it goes to of course Sweet Home Alabama with the kids. So definitely opening wise, keeping my attention, original. Amazing. But definitely I like the kids in the remake so much better. They were just legit originally we say the original was supposed to just be teenagers rambunctious, but they were just not likable. With these, they legit were just teenagers. They went to Mexico, got some weed. We're going to go to the Lynyrd Skynyrd concert. That's all they were doing. It was just very lighthearted. It's just friends on a road trip. And that's why later on when they did die, I felt more aw.
More sympathy.
Yeah. And I was actually, especially when was it Grant? I know, the boyfriend. And you found out he was supposed to propose.
Yeah. God, why'd you have to do that? Yeah.
I was
later on in the scene, later on the movie, I go like this because later on the movie is so sorry, go on.
Yeah. No, legit. So when these kids died, I was devastated. But there's still, of course, a lot of things the original done that I wish they kept. Okay, so my preference, I love the original with Leatherface never finding out who he is and how he changes. Is because I remember correctly, Toby Hooper did talk about how he actually wasn't supposed to, he doesn't have a personality. He portrays superficially what he is wearing. So the mask that he is wearing is what he's feeling. He doesn't have a essence in a way.
That's funny you should say that too. On the trip, I was looking up some information. Evidently, you are so spot on with that. They were saying that in the middle of the process, they had to refilm 5 scenes as Leatherface because the director himself thought Leatherface was too intelligent. He had one line. He said the opportunity to have a line was taken away because it felt as if Leatherface was almost more intelligent than a dog. And in reality, they wanted him to be dumbed down as possible and just a walking, talking ball of PTSD because of it. And he says the big joke is my one opportunity at a line, and he took it away.
Well, and that's a big thing from Gunnar Hansen. Gunnar Hansen, who originally played Leatherface.
Yeah.
It was kind of a choice of his. He's a Norwegian guy, and he decided that Leatherface's character, Bubba, was supposed to be kind of a mentally handicapped person. He was mentally stunted in some way, and I guess his mother worked at a facility that treated and took care of people like that, and so he studied them. He learned how they walked, how they moved, how they reacted to things. How they even sounded, so a lot of his movements and gestures and reactions were based off of things that he had experienced of people who would be like Bubba, the people who have this kind of emotional or even physical stuntedness. He's used by this family as a brute. That's all he is. He doesn't have
being the muscle.
Yeah, he's the muscle. He doesn't have the intelligence or even the emotional intelligence to know what he's doing. He's just doing it because, brother says to do it. And then eventually it just becomes the routine, that's just what he does.
Now, my question to you is on that same note, coming about the comparisons to, let's go into the Leatherface comparisons. And Yaya, I'm going to go right back to you as well with the exact same question. So going into this, now we have the 5 characters. It's been mentioned that the characters might be more likable than the previous versions, and maybe they were taking notes on that too as well. Of course, the soundtrack, you actually have a soundtrack in this one compared to the other one, and we understand that it was rights and so forth. So, classic Sweet Home Alabama. So that was a great reference into it. Now, with this point here, let's go ahead and do the comparisons to Nubbins, Leatherface, or characters that are supposed to be, portrayed by others. Lonny, let's start off with you, my friend, let's go with the demented family in general, going from the hitchhiker to Leatherface to the father type, or whichever character we're going to put into what is your opinion in regards to the delivery in the first film and how they did in the second? Was it more of a nod? Was it more of their own take? What was your opinion, my friend?
So I really like what they did in the remake, actually, with the family. They expanded on them a little bit, which I think was kind of cool. And very similarly to how the first Texas Chainsaw was a breeding ground for what became slashers. I think the 2003 remake was very much a product of its time. Those early 2000 horror movies were very much about a badass soundtrack. It was about having all the cute actors, and also about making the protagonist characters more likable. That was a thing that changed, I think, over time, because even the 80s protagonists, you had like the one protagonist that you were rooting for. The rest of them were just kind of shitbags. Like hangabouts that you're like, okay, they could go. We're done with them. But I think, like, villain wise, I like what they really did. Actually, funny enough, villain wise, I prefer the 2013. It wasn't the remake; it's kind of a follow up version. It's got Alexandria Daddario.
I was going to ask you guys about that. That's interesting. Go on, please do.
It's got Bill Moseley in it as Drayton, which is
cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you get like a really cool personality out of Leatherface, which I think harkens more back to Texas Chainsaw 2, where you get more personality out of Leatherface as well, where you see that he's just kind of a kid. He's got the mental capacity of a child. So all of his reactions and things when he's faced with somebody who he either considers family or as an authoritative figure, he acts that way. Otherwise, he's just a killer. He's just a blind beast that does the bidding of whoever is in control. And I think you kind of get that with that. And I think you get that a bit in the remake as well, as you get to see a little bit more of that out of Leatherface. I will always love Arlene Ermey. He's amazing. And as a Sheriff Hoyt in that remake, he's ominous. He's
all right.
To not be gross. He's daddy. He commands presence. He always has
authority. Yeah.
He's always authority. He's always drill sergeant. He could be a sheriff. He could be a drill sergeant. He could be a father. He's always going to have that.
That man has a yell that's indistinguishable. You can tell.
And it's for one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet in your life. R.I.P.
Yeah.
He could turn that on. So easily, and you could just be scared of him. for just him raising his voice, 3 or 4 decibels higher. That's all that matters.
It's easy. Like, I can. Oh God, it's interesting because you see a lot of people being inspired by him. Just any drill sergeant, cops, just mannerisms, the people who he is. And the crazy thing is that he is one of those few people that have that stature and has that one foundation. If you thought a character that you needed a film like him, you used him. There was no others to actually do that. Why we're on the same note, Yaya, talking about this eccentric family, talking about just the vibes of, I would say, the antagonist, or some of us think they're the protagonist. But let's go and talk about this family here in comparisons from the 1974 version to the 2003 version. Did you have opinions on these?
So in 2003, it's the Hewitts, and the original one is the Sawyers. Finally remember that. But yes, I actually love the Hewitts. I love that it's more of a family thing. You had Luda May, which is the mom. And okay, so I personally as much as I love Hoyt and how uncomfortable he makes me feel. Oh my gosh. So uncomfortable. So warning to people who watch who has SA triggers. That one.
Absolutely.
Hella SA triggers. But I love the Drayton character. And I wish they had a Drayton character kind of like that in the remake. But no, I love the Hewitts, and I love how it's not just them, because if you watch it, you also have the crazy baby crazy girl in the trailer who stole the baby. And that
they kind of make it feel like if you take the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre and you take this movie and put them as an entire world, as a greater cinematic universe, we'll call it the Texas Chainsaw Cinematic Universe. It's almost like it's a community of these crazy evil cannibals. You could put the Firefly family from House of a Thousand Corpses in this neighborhood, and they would all have barbecues together.
Yes, they. Oh my God, yes.
They're all the same they're all the same type of people. So the Hewitts, I think, fit into the remake story. It's part of what I like about it. As no, they're not the Sawyers, but they're not supposed to be the Sawyers. The Sawyers are one family, the Hewitts are another family, but they're in the same community, which makes it even worse.
Yes. And then especially for people who don't read, there's a comic book based on the 2003 too, which is so much darker. Oh my God, it's so much darker. I
did not know that.
There's a comic book, and it's, if you really want a good breakdown of the characters, there's a sequel prequel, which is Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the beginning, which talks about why the Hewitts started killing people. And it was due to the town was dying, there was no food, the slaughterhouse closed down, and then Hoyt wasn't originally the sheriff. His name wasn't even Hoyt. He killed he killed the real Hoyt. And I love Hoyt in that one, because because in the original 2003 one, it doesn't seem like he cares about Tommy Hewitt, which is Leatherface, but you get that in the prequel sequel, and I think that so much humanizes him and makes it even more he's not just an asshole, he's actually doing it to provide for the family and that kind of stuff, and that's what possible. I know, right? That's what I really like. Of course, and then you find out the real one that's really unlikable is Monty with his no legs.
Right.
But so comparison, I love the Hewitts. I love how how close they are, and they're doing this because they just trying to survive as a family. And you get the little really weird kid, Jedediah, which is funny because Jedediah is usually used throughout the whole universe, not just with the original because Leatherface is usually I think it's fandom has agreed that Bubba is a nickname. His real name is supposed to be Jedediah, and that was used later on in the other Leatherface and all the ones. He's actually kept the name Jedediah. And so I love how it was tied into the 2003 version with the little kid being Jedediah.
Yeah, right on. Which I think they bring up. I think they bring up in the newest one that came out, the 2021.
I heard that.
It's got the only thing I like about it is it's got super fun kills. It's got super fun kills. Yeah, and everybody in that is pretty much hateable.
But see, you know what's crazy though? I will tell you this: out of both of these films, I have the 2003 version the death scene of the jock type. I'm going to put this in here right now. How he was dead but not dead. That made me almost go in tears. Because that reveal, I wasn't expecting that. Because like when I saw it, I was like, oh, it's gonna be the chop shop stuff again. These people are gonna die and everything. And so they did a really good job at and you know, Yaya, you mentioned it with them being unlikable at the beginning. Lonny, you mentioned it later on with them actually doing the classic early 2000 horror style, making them likable, you know, hot, sexy individuals, and give them a little bit of likeness. So when they die, it hurts. Yeah. Right. I thought they gave Homeboy justice in this film in regards to giving him like a likable attachment. I liked him more than the final girl. I liked him more than Jessica Biel because I just it just that point I was like, what the heck? They did a good job in just making the individual, like Stephen King does here, like a character, they're gone. So I mean, I was very impressed by that in general, and just how they did that in, you know, within the 20-minute time span, because hypothetically speaking, this came out in the early concepts where movies weren't beyond the 120-minute mark. You know, we you know, they were there, and anything that was 134, 154 better had something with it, or you just got bored. And so the ability to take a slasher, which is normally blood and gore, all across the board, scaring the crap out of people, and then also doing the classic thing like they've done in Scream, which I thought Scream picked out on this pretty well, having that one character have his blowout moment, and you're like, he's alive, and like almost there, and then take him away. I just, Lord. So out of all of them, that hurt me the most.
Texas Chainsaw, I think throughout its entire series has kind of had that too. It's like, oh, they're done. They're not done. Okay.
Just kidding.
Oh, no, they're done. Okay.
Stop doing that to us.
Yeah.
Lord
one thing I will also make a comparison to that I kind of like, it's a subtle thing, but I think it's an important thing from the original that I think they carried over into the remake a little bit. They kind of paid homage to it a little bit, is how gross it feels.
Oh my God.
The original film, you can feel how hot it is. You can feel how sweaty and smelly and gross they are. You kind of get that a little bit in the remake too. You can just tell everybody's got that glisten of sweat, you know, the stains on their tank tops.
Southern weather, that humidity level of 36%.
That gross Texas weather.
Oh, that shirt's like, it's part of my skin now. Yeah.
Feels like it right now, actually.
which in the original was almost a character in itself. In the original is
that's a good
just
point.
How gross it feels.
Yeah.
The vibe
even like when you're in the Sawyer house, especially at the end there, which one of the fun little factoids, if you want to know something, the final scenes that were shot in the Sawyer house, that was a marathon shoot of 26 hours to do that entire like last bit of that film.
That is some golden hours. So
when she rolls out of the house and it's daylight, it was the first time they had seen daylight that day.
Oh my God.
Wow.
And it was like 115 that day. Like people were having to get in and out of the house just to get oxygen and throw up because of how hot it was.
Oh God, it
was a brutal shoot, this entire thing. But that last bit was all shot in 26 hours straight. Everybody was exhausted. You can even tell. You see Sally, like when she's running away, that's not just her kind of fumbling around. She is exhausted.
I was about to say that too as well. You realize that they said that some obnoxious number around like 70% of the blood on her clothing was her actual blood. They said that in the running scenes.
The finger scene where they cut her finger and feed it to Grandpa. Gunnar Hansen actually cut her finger in that scene.
What?
So they were originally trying to use like a prop knife, which had like the blood and stuff in it, but the pump wasn't working, so the blood wouldn't come out. And Gunnar Hansen literally got frustrated and literally just took a knife and cut her finger. And when she puts it into the actor's mouth, it was actually her blood in his mouth.
Oh my God. That's intense.
Yeah.
Dude, okay. Oh my Lord. So I have this, like, long story short, you just told me the 26, it makes me cringe because I was on a 7-minute film. 7-minute film, and we filmed for 7 hours. I was complaining about that, into the hot heat. I can only imagine that poor cast in that obnoxious hot weather. And was it this? And like considering the fact, like the lack of cloud cover in Texas in general, it just but the finger thing.
Yeah.
Oh my Lord.
Well, even on top of that, to add to that, like this is all during this marathon thing that happened. Jim Saito, who plays Drayton, He hadn't really done like a whole lot of films before. He did some TV stuff, and they kind of got him because he was a Texas actor. And originally he was supposed to be pretty brutal with Sally. Like he was supposed to beat her up pretty good, and he was just Texas gentlemanly guy. He just couldn't do it, and all of the scenes that they were shooting, it just didn't look right. And Marilyn Burns just kept egging him on, like you gotta make it feel real. You gotta do it, and he was making contact, like it was stage contact type of stuff, and just not making it work out. And finally, Marilyn Burns just says, just hit me. And he couldn't do it. And eventually her egging him on, and it being like 18 hours into the shoot, he just got fed up and full on slugs her, like for real, punches her in the face. And so when you see her get hit by Drayton, he's actually hitting her.
Oh my God.
And Jim Sidehouse did to like for years even, because I believe he died in like 2007 or something like that. But even in interviews to that day, he's like, he's always felt bad about that, because Sally at the end of that movie, you can see how exhausted she was. She was really exhausted. She was beat up. She was bleeding. She was exhausted. She was dehydrated. And that added to that feeling of that final girl finally being done feeling. The scream that she did in the back of the truck she talks about was literally her just going, finally it's over. Like for real, her screaming
after
like that.
Homeboy launches that freaking huge wrench at Leatherface right in the head. But dude, you like you said, her face, you could like, you hit the nail on the head, dude. She looked like literally exhausted. She was just, I mean, oh my gosh. No, right. On that note, guys, we're getting to a little closing time on this here. I want to make sure, once again, thank you guys for even joining us and talking about this great film, these great films in general. I think we mentioned a couple films that I think we should talk about in the future, which I'll let you guys know. So I'm going to be excited about this. Guys, let's start off you, Yaya. Where can we find you on your socials?
So you can find me on YouTube at Jade Palace Yaya. I actually just uploaded a video today. Excitement. But you can also find me here on Twitch, which is at My Hamachi, where I stream Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And if you want to find me on other social media like Instagram, TikTok, all that fun stuff, you can either find me at Jade Palace Yaya or at My Hamachi. Also, I will be at PMX. Come find me. Come say hi.
Go find her. Say hi. She's a great person. We love having her.
Oh, thank you. But yes, that's all the places you can find me.
Fantastic. Lonny, where can we find you, my friend, on your socials?
On Instagram and Twitter, it's the Sith Abides.
I love that name.
I post regularly. Usually me griping about some sort of movie or whatever, or talking about props and movies that I'm excited about. You know, one being the new Hellraiser coming out. And if I could make a suggestion,
yes,
for lovers of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and if you like A24 films, I would suggest the movie X.
Yeah. Well, I want to watch it again. I know exactly.
X is so good, and I'm excited about Pearl, which is the prequel that is coming out.
I did not know about that, and
Mia Goth is playing the young version of the old lady from X.
Okay, I'm down. Well, shoot. Well, guys, that's all the time we have to talk about today on regards to the Chainsaw Massacre, the 1973 version and the 2003 version. Thank you guys for tuning in. You guys are always great at joining us. And once again, thank you, guests, for being here and talking about this great film. Now, along with this here, remember, Nom Watch Review and Basic Binges are in podcast form. You can listen to them wherever you are to get your podcast. Tune in for our next show, which is going to be, we're going to be talking about, I've lost the thing over here. I apologize. She-Hulk. So it's going to be She-Hulk, which is going to be talked about on the... I need some assistance, producer stuff. What date? Tomorrow. I'm excited. So very hyped about that.
Yeah, after this, I think I'm going to go watch the episode. So.
Oh, God. I feel you. Once again, guys, ladies and gentlemen, Wizards, thank you so much for joining us. As again, please have a fantastic night. Love, peace, chicken grease. Good night.